Kia ora, my name's Kimmy and I talk about Formula One in the world's second worst accent. Today I'm going to climb up this here hill just to demonstrate a point. I am not prepared for this at all, and I want to go home. Holy shit. I don't have emphysema, I swear. Oh my god. Okay, I made it. There was a slog. But let's talk about why I'm here. I just climbed up a very tall hill that I am woefully unprepared to actually climb up. I might look like I'm in shape, but I'll tell you what, I am incredibly unfit. I just happen to win the genetics lottery and really enjoy wearing athleisure. But still, what's the point, you're asking? Well, it's kind of a bit of a clumsy analogy, really. We learned quite a lot from the last couple of weekends of Formula One, but from the Chinese GP in particular, I learned three key things. And the first thing is that Red Bull will continue to put really incredibly unprepared drivers in its top seat, hoping that they can somehow miraculously drive like Max Verstappen, without kind of really acknowledging that they have a generational talent on their hands. Red Bull has a very, very difficult car. In fact, I would go as far to say Red Bull has a bad car that Max Verstappen just happens to be able to drive. And if they continue to stick people who have had 10 races in it and expecting them to swim rather than immediately sink, then you know what, Red Bull just kind of doesn't really know what the hell it's doing. As an aside to that, Red Bull had the perfect driver to go up against Max Verstappen, and they decided to just use him as a patsy and then immediately throw him in the bin when he was no longer of immediate use to them. Because the long-term gains from retaining somebody who was kind of the initiator of Red Bull going down this path of having an extremely on-the-nose car isn't just in potential small amounts of performance increases, because let's be honest, I think we can all probably agree that Daniel might not have been absolutely smashing it out of the park and getting podiums in that Red Bull, but he certainly wouldn't have been qualifying P20, and that's all great to say in hindsight, but this is actually something that I've been banging on about for, well, pretty much 2 years really. People didn't believe, and now we're looking back in retrospect and going, you know what, actually maybe Daniel was the right choice for that Red Bull. And you know what, I just climbed a hill and nearly died, so maybe I'll come back here one day. So really, what is point number one? Well, Red Bull just doesn't have any direction. They're throwing spaghetti at a wall and hoping it sticks in more ways than one, and that's never a good way to make progress. And if they're thinking about swapping out Liam Lawson after 2 races, which I don't think is actually true, I think that that's probably the media speculating to a point that's just kind of ridiculous. I mean, I've seen people talking about Colapinto being put in that seat. I'm sorry, Flavio is not letting that guy without at least doubling his money, and that would be ridiculous. Honestly, if I were Yuki, I would be resisting that swap as much as possible, because that poison chalice is not worth even the remotest chance of a podium. I'm sorry, it's not. That seat will destroy your career. There was only one person who was suitable for that role, and yeah, Daniel Ricciardo was the one that started Red Bull down this path of an extremely pointy front-ended car in the first place, and Max just kind of helped them take that and develop it to its kind of extreme end, which is where it is now, which is unstable and bad. And I'm not saying that Max is terrible at car development, because he's clearly not. I mean, he did help them build the RB19 after all, but whatever has happened since Adrian Newey started stepping away from the development of that car back in 2023 is clearly not working. Checo couldn't drive it. Checo was an amazing driver, and I agree, he needed to go, but he needed to go because he was not suited to that car. There's no point in Red Bull trying to shove heaps of drivers into that car and mold their driving style around exactly how difficult that thing is to drive. What they need to do is find someone who already kind of works with that style. and just needs to kind of refine a little bit exactly how they handle the machinery. I don't think anybody that's kind of grown into their career through that Racing Bulls car slash V-Carb slash Toro Rosso slash AlphaTauri slash Minardi slash whatever is ever going to be successful in that Red Bull, because the V-Carb has always kind of been inherently easier to drive. It is, after all, a junior team. It is intended to be able to bring people into the sport and ease them in without chucking them in the deep end, like what we've just seen happen to Liam Lawson and like what we saw happen to Alex Albon and to Pierre Gasly. Point number 2 we learned this past weekend very much is that, how do I say this? The TV directors need to be a little bit more mindful of what radio they choose to broadcast, because they are directly kind of informing the social media narrative around what driver gets the most hate every week. So yeah, there's that. I think it was completely valid that Fred Vasseur got pretty damn peeved with the fact that Lewis Hamilton's initial message to swap the cars was not broadcast in favour of him resisting the swap because he didn't think it was an appropriate time to do it. Now, I agree. I think that Lewis probably should have just sucked it up and lifted for a little bit longer so that Charles could pass at an earlier point, because there were certainly opportunities. They might not have been ideal, like perfect spots on the track, but you know, he had 3 seconds back to the nearest car. It's not like they were going to get immediately overtaken. But the fact that Lewis actually asked to swap prior to any messages being broadcast and we didn't hear that, well, that certainly did kind of develop a narrative around that whole situation. Personally, I think the thing that we should be focusing on with Ferrari is just Ferrari things. And I'll get to that. But Formula One management in general and the television directors, the broadcast directors, need to be very, very aware of exactly how much social media plays into how people are having conversations around F1 and sports in general in a more contemporary environment. And I feel like they're kind of sometimes willfully ignorant of how the radio messages they choose to broadcast can influence the discourse, shall we say, on certain platforms. Now, I'm not saying that Blue Sky is a bastion of, you know, hearts and flowers and sunshines and rainbows, because it's not. We get bitchy on there too, but that other place, wow. I'm not on there anymore, so I kind of have to rely on screenshots, and I am glad that I do not have an account and cannot actually see those threads, because damn, some of them be nasty. I feel like ever since like we've kind of had that conversation around don't be a see you next Tuesday to people on the internet, or F1 drivers specifically on the internet, it's got even worse. And of course FOM has kind of come out in the last sort of day or so and said, hey, we're really sorry, we didn't mean for that to happen. But the reality is, to omit something like that, when you have people that are actively looking for the right bits of radio to pick out and broadcast, and still choosing not to broadcast that, when you know, because whoever heard that the first time would have known. They would have immediately thought, okay, this is something, this is probably going to happen, maybe we need to forward that through to those who do make the choices. They would have known that that was going to have a consequence. And choosing not to broadcast it, yeah, it could have been an error or an omission that just kind of slipped through the cracks, but to me it seems more like a pretty severe error in judgment, because there was no way that choosing to not broadcast that and choosing to broadcast what came after it, well, you know, you're fully aware of what people are going to say about that. You know, this was, what was it? It was 10 minutes, maybe longer, of dithering and like, he needs to get closer, we need to get into a better part of the track. Like, come on, man. Like, that just seems deliberate. Yes, I know I've miraculously suddenly got sunglasses and I should have been wearing them the whole time, but you know what? We make bad decisions, don't we? We do. And Ferrari also tends to make some apparently bad decisions, which is point number 3. Ferrari doing just Ferrari things. Now, you would kind of look at it on the surface and go, you know what, they've been disqualified for plank wear before in a similar situation, and George Russell got disqualified for being underweight in also a similar situation. Did we not learn from that? Did we? Did we not learn from the first winner in 30 years being disqualified for being underweight because he changed from a 2 to a 1-stop strategy? But apparently, no, Ferrari just likes to remind us sometimes that, you know, yeah. Now this is exactly the kind of thing that I would expect from the Scuderia back in the Binotto days. Here I was thinking that Fred Vasseur was going to be the balm that we all needed to fix the entire situation. This is going to be the world's most disjointed video ever because I have had to stop probably 45 times. Like, I am so stupid. I should have just done the climb and then walked back down and then filmed this out on the field down the bottom. But you know, the view's beautiful and I wanted to show you my city because it's gorgeous, right? Te Te Airo o Kiriopa, the boulder bank, is out there. You know, it's the world's longest natural boulder bank, which is a pretty cool thing to have, you know, like the centre of New Zealand is here, supposedly. It's not, it's about 50 k's that way, but you know, like, it's a beautiful place. Most of you would call it a small town. We call it a city because it's got a cathedral. But back to Ferrari. I'm never going to finish filming this. I'm going to get home and it's going to be like 5 p.m. You guys are going to see the sunset. This is going to be fun. And I'm going to be so sunburned because I bought no sunscreen. Go me. You'd think that after all these years of telling tourists, bring sunscreen if you're out in the sun for 10 minutes, you're going to burn to a crisp. I would do that myself, but no. No. But anyway, Ferrari being Ferrari, back to that. So we didn't learn from George Russell's 2 to 1 stop strategy in Spa last year, and we didn't learn apparently either from Austin in 2023. So what is Ferrari learning exactly? Well, the car doesn't seem very good. Here I was sitting on a viewing platform at the Melbourne GP going, you know what, it's fine, they're going to be really good in the race. And then the rain came and they still was. The other thing about Ferrari is that the previous 2 teammates, and I know, I have a bias here. Personally, I still think that Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz were a match made in absolute heaven. I'm not mad about Charles and Lewis. I think, you know, that inarguably the best teammate pairing on the grid. But I still have a soft spot in my heart for that previous 4 years. That previous 4 years where they did not come together. They nearly did, but they did not come together once. Instead, this year we've got 2 races where Charles and Lewis have come together twice. That is 100% hit rate for hitting one another. I think that kind of sets the tone for the year, don't you think? And to be fair, let's be honest, teammate rivalries are some of the best things to watch in this sport. So if they do end up having a lot of argy-bargy on the track, I'm going to be having a great time. But Charles and Lewis, if they go on social media, well, you know, they might not. And if Formula One continues to broadcast selective radio messages like what we got in China, then we're going to have a problem. So yeah, all 3 things I had confirmed in China. I don't know, if you enjoyed this terrible disjointed video with a beautiful backdrop, please make sure to like this video and please make sure you subscribe to my channel. I am going to be working on putting together a Patreon soon. That Patreon, you will get absolutely nothing. It is just going to be, if you enjoy my videos and would like to show a little bit of support, then you can donate a little bit of money. I personally, not a big fan of coffee, find that's a little bit messy. Patreon, just a little bit easier. But please, like when I do start it, don't do it through Apple. You'll get a 30% surcharge because Apple's a you know what. If you're new here and haven't watched one of my videos before, then you can watch another one. I don't know which one YouTube's going to recommend. It'll be up in the corner somewhere. I think that direction. Maybe I should have been sitting on this side. Anyway, I'm going to go back down the hill. I'll see you next time where I'm planning on talking about if you're from this part of the world, this general vicinity, and your nearest races are Melbourne and Singapore, which one should you go to and which one is cheaper? And you know what? It might not be the one you expect. I haven't done the maths on it yet, but who knows? I'll see you next time. Okay, my knees were not built for this. This is, ow, ow, ow. I used to like live down in there somewhere, like actually a little bit further along. It was very dark and miserable in winter. We got 5 minutes sun. We were constantly sick. It was great. And here we are back where we started, at the bottom of the hill. where things aren't really so bad after all. And maybe that's the case for Daniel Ricciardo, who got out of the Red Bull meat grinder, no longer has to deal with Helmut Marko, is a millionaire, and probably feels quite a little bit of schadenfreude, considering so many people online are saying, hey, maybe he was the right guy after all. Regardless, if Red Bull does decide to bin Liam Lawson off before the Japanese Grand Prix, I would be very surprised, because that is not going to do them any good when it comes to the overall PR disasters that they seem to be dealing with nowadays. Watching Jolyon Palmer's grid walk on Sunday was a bit of a revelation, not just because it was strange to know that Will Buxton wouldn't be doing it anymore, but because when he got to Christian Horner, Christian was visibly stressed. I have never seen him look so stressed out ever, even after all of that dropped last year, which, by the way, that is still ongoing. That is not over. I think Christian is under a hell of a lot of pressure at the moment, and I would not be surprised if he gets the boot sometime between now and the end of the year, but watch this space. As I've said to you guys many times in the past, I'm not the patriotic type. Just because somebody is a fellow Kiwi doesn't mean that I'm going to support them. And you know, I've kind of proven that by continuing to die on that hill that Daniel Ricciardo was the right person for that seat. But I don't wish bad on him. I don't want him to get the sack before he's had a chance to even remotely try and prove what he can do. He didn't get an adequate amount of testing time. He didn't get enough practice in Australia due to car issues that weren't his fault. He'd never driven that track before. He'd never driven China before. And yes, some of the other rookies performed much better than he did overall from a weekend perspective, but they are generally driving cars that aren't actively trying to crash them into a wall. So please, Red Bull, at least give him until the summer break to show some improvement. And please, for the love of God, please do not put Yuki in that seat, because I do not want to see you destroy that man's career. Okay. I think that's me. Ka kite. I've said goodbye like 5 times in the filming of this, but I'm saying it again. Yeah, see you later. Bye. Yeah, that thing.